You're listening to the Navigating Leadership Podcast, a podcast where you get to sit in on conversations I'm blessed to have with leaders from around the country and right here at home. I'm Dave Freund, and welcome. This week, I'm joined by my friend and fellow Maxwell Leadership Executive Program Leader, Jack Klemeyer. Jack brings a wonderful perspective of leadership and growth that spans more than 30 years. Let's jump into the conversation and hear directly from Jack. Graduate of Ball State University. What's the mascot for Ball State?
It's the Cardinal. And
The Cardinal.
you got to remember, when I went there so many years ago, it was the largest high school in the Midwest. So it's a fully accredited university now. But
Okay,
yeah.
a Cardinal from Ball State. You were influential in bringing Zig Ziglar's I Can course to the students at Ball State to help them have a more positive mindset beyond college. Actively involved in Toastmasters since 1984. You know, really all that means is you're old. No, I'm just kidding, Jack.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly.
But you've held several offices from club president to division governor, and you helped start 3 clubs in Indiana.
Yeah.
Certified Maxwell Leadership Executive Program Leader. Ooh, that's a fancy title.
Yeah.
Certified Master Practitioner in Neuro-Linguistic Programming and Certified Language and Behavior Consultant.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. Certified Myers-Briggs Facilitator. You're accredited facilitator of the Psychology of Sales Call.
Sales call
Do you
reluctance.
remember all this?
Yeah, sales call reluctance. Yeah, absolutely. I do.
I just wondered if maybe I'm just reminding you of things for the first time. You're not. I'm just kidding. Certified facilitator of the Coaching Clinic, which was developed by Coaching U Incorporated. You spent 13 years with a major multi-line insurance company.
Yeah.
Active member of the National Speakers Association and the American Society of Training and Development.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sought after business coach, speaker, and consultant, but probably the most important thing, married to Kathy,
Yes.
father of Melissa, Elizabeth, and John, hailing from Brownsburg, Indiana. My friend and now yours, Jack Klemeyer. Jack, welcome.
Hey, thanks, David. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. You've been talking about all your friends that you've had on the podcast, and I was like, when's my turn? When's my turn? And now it's today, so I'm excited.
Today.
Yeah.
And another Ball State grad. You know, who would have thought that the university with the most graduates on the Navigating Leadership podcast would be Ball State?
Wow.
So notable graduates, David Letterman.
Yes.
Wow. And Don Yeager, who was my first guest on the podcast.
Yeah. And Don and I were there at the same time, actually. He was when I was a senior, he would have been a sophomore. So we were there at the same time. A very good friend of mine who worked for the newspaper, which is what Don did back then, knew Don. And it's neat, a small world when that comes together.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Jack, thank you so much for joining me. You know, my listeners know that I love to talk to people about leadership and challenges of leadership. And you and I have known each other for, a while. Like, I think we officially met. Was it 2017?
Yeah, I think in Palm Beach, West Palm or something like that.
West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Where sadly you got stuck at a table with me.
Oh, it was great. That was a good one.
And even though we kind of should have known each other from Maxwell Leadership, but that was really a great opportunity because there may have only been about 30 of us there in the room.
Yeah.
And that really, you know, we established a friendship that I think is just a precious thing.
Oh, me too. Thank you.
Connect with you on a regular basis. So before we get into my standard questions, let's talk about you've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this. Why don't you tell us about your business?
Yeah. So, I've been doing coaching and training. As a matter of fact, my first coach training was in 1995 when I first went into leadership. It was way, way back in the beginning of coaching. And the training was very thorough. We danced around a room. It was bizarre because back in the day, there was, how do you train a coach? But I've been through several different reiterations of coaching. And then when I went out on my own in 2003, I did speaking, training, and coaching. And then just did that. And then I was a hired gun for a couple different firms. And then, sometimes I have good years, bad years, right? But then in 2015, I decided to go ahead and become a John Maxwell coach, which I did, and haven't looked back. It's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed every step, every learning opportunity, every failure, every positive, every negative. It's always been good. I mean, just what's come of it.
That's great. What did John Maxwell's organization do to help you take your business to the next level?
I think it gave community. People like you, right? We're friends.
Yep.
Like we call each other when we're in distress or when we're having success. Um, that community piece has been really good. And as I've stepped into that community and become more active in it, and fortunate enough to be a member of faculty, and that was all through relationship building and through connecting. It wasn't, it wasn't designed as such. It's just that with Kay and Shy, Kay Salerno and Shy Morris, whenever their mom was the marketing person, and I just was enamored with her. I thought she was neat and fun, and so I started kind of hanging around. And they had a booth one time, and I said, "How can I serve you at your booth?" And I just went there and helped. And then when they had a advisory council, they invited me to participate, and then they made me one of the first 3 faculty members, which was just amazing.
The power of proximity.
Yeah, it is. Right. Yeah. And the power of
You know,
relationships, right?
yes. Yeah. When you're around people, opportunities will present themselves if you work on that relationship piece. You know, that key thing about who are the 5 people you're around the most and how impactful that is on the trajectory for your life.
And that's scary sometimes too, when you look at that, right? Are you around the 5 people by default, or are you intentional? You know, and there's some people that I wish I was around more that I'm not. And there's a couple that I'm not around much anymore.
So let's dig into that a little bit. So you and we met in 2017 in Palm Beach,
Right.
and then shortly after that, you started up with Robbie a little group called the 46ers.
Yeah. Robbie and John Nab. And then you were part of that original group too, I think.
Yep.
I don't know who, and Robin Lewis, who
Yep.
never, because Robin had his own insurance business, but he was at our
Right.
table. We called it the 46ers because one of the questions they were the whole exercise of the room was to go through the first leader's journey, the 2-day training around the 21 laws of leadership. And so we went through the first play of that, I guess, if you will, kind of a pilot. Yep. And they said, what are some characteristics of leadership? And our table came up with 46 different things. And that's where the name 46ers came from. But again, community, right? So I saw you guys. I was like, I looked up to all you guys, and it was kind of like, okay, I want to hang around you more. One of my strengths is grouping, like the enabling, not the enabling thing, but the whatever it's called. Anyway,
the galvanizing piece that brings people together.
Yeah. So that's what I did, and so that started probably in 2018, maybe. It's still going.
Right.
Yeah.
And so why don't you share with our listeners what that's all about? Like what is this? What do we do?
Yeah, so we meet every other Thursday evening for an hour, only an hour. And we've invited other people. Some show up, some don't. But those that have been there thick and thin through the whole thing, I've probably missed maybe 10 sessions in all those years, as has David. I mean, there's sometimes when you got family commitments or other things, but we bring in challenges, things we're worried about, things we're celebrate success, celebrate wins, but also to say, guys, I'm not sure how to handle this, or I need some help thinking this through. And so it's just a trusted group of people that, what we talk about stays there. We value each other. We believe in each other. We tell the truth to each other. And it's just become, to me, it's an important part of my development, because I know that I have a group that I can fall back on, a close inner circle, if you will,
right,
that will help me through problems or help me celebrate wins.
Yeah. And I think it's such a valuable time. People say, well, how could you give up an extra hour in your week? No, it's a privilege to be. Now, there are times when we can't.
Yeah, right.
Family issues get in the way, whatever, we may be traveling. But to be able to get together with people that know you, that you can share a concern or share an idea or say, does this make any sense? What am I missing here? We hold each other accountable. And, it's interesting that C.S. Lewis had a group that he met with back in London. They met at a pub and they were called the Inklings. And they did the same thing. They shared their writings with each other. And then they would critique each other's writings. And so our listeners should just look up the Inklings. You'd be fascinated by the authors that actually got together with C.S. Lewis.
Well, if you ever do a summer barbecue or a fall barbecue, you use charcoal briquettes. The Kingsford,
Yes.
that came from a mastermind from a group very much like this with Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone and Thomas Edison and some others that would meet.
Wow.
And Ford had when he would make the cars, the frames were made out of wood and the seats were made out of wood. And he said,
Yep.
I have all this wood. What do I do with it? And they kicked around the idea that, and he made charcoal out of it, briquettes, charcoal briquettes.
Amazing.
Kingsford, F-O-R-D is the last word. And used to be in the 1930s when you wanted to get a barbecue grill, you would go to your Ford dealership and buy a barbecue grill and the charcoal at your Ford dealership.
Amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that just fascinates me that the Inklings,
Yep.
charcoal briquettes, all that stuff came from just some guys working on how do we make this better.
And I really, and I don't want our listeners to miss the power in this, the power of getting together, call it masterminding, call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's super powerful. And actually, down in Fort Myers, Florida, Henry Ford's place and Thomas Edison's place were next door.
Yeah. Yeah.
They even wanted to be down there together so that they could bounce ideas off each other. I think that's just awesome. So, Jack, as you try to work with organizations to grow leaders within, what are some challenges that you think companies are facing today?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of challenges. If you look at the economy and if you look at the political spectrum, you could go down those avenues. But I think from a personal standpoint, interpersonal, I guess, is awareness is a big one. Being aware of where your strengths are, being aware of where you're not as strong, where your Achilles heel. I like to use that reference a lot. I love mythology in high school. I was kind of a nerd. And it fascinates me that, Achilles had one space of vulnerability, and that's where Paris's arrow went into his heel, and that's what killed him. And so that means that we have that area of vulnerability, an area that could be our demise. I mean, if it went unchecked. And so I think that's a big one I see, is that leaders don't realize that. And then the other thing I think is that leaders don't recognize their strengths. They don't recognize what they're really good at. And so they end up trying to do everything as opposed to what they should be doing, because that's where their gift is. And I think those are the two things that I see. And then, you could talk about me and all that stuff. But I think it's awareness. What am I good at? What am I not good at? How do I protect myself from what I'm not good at? And how do I magnify what I am good at?
So if you had a leader that you're working with and they realize that this is an area that they have some weaknesses, how do you encourage them to deal with that?
I laugh at them. No, not at all. We talk about it. It's like, is that something that would get in your way? Is that, I do that mostly through questions.
Yeah.
I found that the more you direct someone or the more you tell someone something, the less apt they are to listen or accept it, acknowledge it. But if you ask questions and let them come to their own conclusions about it, not leading questions, not fake questions.
Sure.
But questions, just, if this keeps showing up, how's it going to affect your team? How's it going to affect your business? How's it going to affect things? And so that's just trying to think about the good question. I think that's the thing that always fascinates me is how to ask the right question. And I wear red socks every day, something that inside baseball you guys should know. But unless I'm wearing shorts or sandals, and with shorts the kids won't let me. With sandals my wife won't let me. But I wear red socks, and the reason why I wear red socks, I was at a neuro-linguistic training. It was an advanced communication training in Colorado, and there was this guy there from England, and he was really good at listening and at putting questions together and just all the things that we were trying to learn. And he had on shorts, and he had on like hiking boots, and he had on red socks. I'm like, why is he wearing red socks? I've never seen it, So I went up to him and I said, hey, dude, what's with the socks? Right. And he said, well, if I don't wear socks, my feet sweat, and because my shoes are leather. And I thought, that's not what I wanted to know.
Right.
I didn't ask the right question. Why do you wear red socks? And so then it struck me that some guys, when they wear khaki pants, they wear khaki socks. Some guys, when they wear black pants, they wear black socks. But can you imagine getting up in the morning and you only have khaki socks? Then that forces you to wear khaki pants, for those of you that do that, which then nobody ever sees your socks. No one would ever know. But it's just kind of, I think of it as marketing begins with the color of your socks, because it's how you behave behind the scenes that makes it happen, right? It's your beliefs and your behavior that determines who you are. And that stuff that it's not written down anywhere, but people see it all the time. It shows up. So I know that's a kind of a weird story, but I'm sticking to it.
I love that. Marketing begins with red socks.
With the color of your socks.
The color of your socks. Okay.
Yeah.
So have you ever had anybody ask you, Jack, why are you wearing red socks?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Well, nowadays they ask me, like, if I go to a chamber meeting, they'll go, "Hey, you got your Red Sox on?" I got to show them. Yeah, they're on.
Yep.
And back in the day, I would tell people, "Hey, challenge me, ask me, do I have my Red Sox on?" And so people do, and
Love it.
I wear them every day. And they don't, used to be kind of hard to find. Now you can find them a little easier, but yeah, I wear them with suits or dress clothes or jeans. I just wear them every day.
That's great. Love that story. And it becomes part of your brand.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. It's
Great.
not about a baseball team. It's not about the
No,
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 no.
no. You probably in the Indianapolis area, you probably couldn't get away with being a Red Sox fan.
Yeah, our farm team here is for the Pirates, and so and then this is heavy Cincinnati Reds territory or St.
Yes.
Louis Cardinals territory.
Right.
So those are the two big ones. There are a few, like my wife Kathy, there are a few Chicago Cubs fans, but
Okay.
yeah, but mostly Reds or Cardinals fans.
Probably not too many Yankee fans, huh?
No, well, one of my best friends is a Yankees fan. Well, he's now a Dodgers fan, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and our listeners already know that it can't be a podcast with Dave if Dave isn't coughing. So you probably wouldn't know that. There's no cough button for me. It happens.
Well, good.
And to my listeners, yes, I have another cough. So let's get into some of my more standard questions.
Yeah.
What's the greatest lesson you ever learned? And who did you learn it from?
That question, I as you shared the questions with me, and I'm like, the greatest, the EST on that, the greatest. That's a big ask. What came to mind immediately was my dad. So in the 60s, we had a lumber company, and it was, a big business back then. We did $1 million in sales a year. And my grandfather died unexpectedly at age 60. And my dad was in his 30s and was the heir apparent to the business. My grandfather had a brother that thought the business ought to be his. And I don't know, it was ugly, a mess. And the lumber company ended up going out of business. But my dad would come in when he would, tell me good night and love me. And he would always say, "Remember, tomorrow's always a better day." And he would say that. And I've learned now, I've gone through some failures, gone through some things, that Dad was telling me that more for him, or as much for him as he was for me. Right. Because he was reminding himself tomorrow's a better day, even because today was probably pretty crappy, when you lose your business.
Sure.
So that's the one. And then the other one is the story he told me that he said, "Jack, there's two kinds of people that brighten the room. There's the kind that when they walk in, the room gets brighter. And then there's the kind that when they walk out, the room gets brighter."
Mm.
You always want to be the one that when you walk in, the room gets brighter.
Yeah.
So that's been those are it's greatest is there's two of them there, but they're kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, clearly you took that advice from your dad, because I will say that, when you enter a room, the room gets brighter.
Oh, thanks.
You just bring a lot of joy and positivity to the room. And it kind of reminds me of, and I might get it wrong as to how I word it, but in the IMC event that you were at personally in person, I was virtual. John said something to the effect of the greatest asset a leader can have is a positive mindset.
Yeah, right. Yes, he did.
And then I loved how he said, it's not something that you like develop and have, it's something you work on every day.
Oh my gosh. Yes, you do. Yeah.
And I really was thinking about that. And a lot of our listeners, going back from when this was the Next Page podcast, they know that I choose an attitude every day.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like, I got to choose a positive attitude. I got to choose joy. I got to choose gratitude, because I don't feel like it that day.
Yeah. Right.
But by choosing it, all of a sudden we look at life and we realize that things aren't happening to us. They're happening for us.
Yeah. I remember Chris Robinson, the executive vice president of the Maxwell team, our leader, if you will, that he had a gratitude journal, and he would write, I'm thankful that it's not freezing cold today, or
Yes,
it doesn't matter where you find gratitude. The scope and the size of it doesn't matter. I'm thankful that I have shoelaces in my shoes, whatever it is, because that attitude of gratitude sets the direction, right?
Exactly.
I
And
think
I was on a coaching call this morning, and a young manager in a business, and he's one of the things I noted about his session today was he was much more positive
oh,
than
cool.
usual. Usually he struggles with it. And we talked about the fact that you need 3 positives for every negative.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
just got to look for them and work through them. So your dad really had some good advice for you.
yeah, yeah. And I know things weren't always good for him, weren't always easy for weren't for him.
Yep.
But that's what I take away from it.
Very good. So
Yeah.
what's Jack learning right now?
Gosh, I'm fascinated with the leadership. It's not that I don't think you're done with it. I think it's an ongoing, evolving process. I'm digging into that more. Accountability seems to be a big thing that I've been focusing on, and High Road Leadership book by John Maxwell, chapter 9's on accountability, and I think that chapter could be a whole book.
Right.
The 17 laws, I think it's chapter 9 again, is the law of accountability. With teammates
Yes.
need to be able to count on each other when it counts, right?
Hmm?
So those are two big themes I think that I'm focusing on, if you will. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, so those are two big themes. Yeah.
So if I were to ask you, give me 2 books that you've read that you think other people absolutely have to read before they breathe their last breath, what would they be?
The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Okay.
Agreements. The book is kind of a spiritual based book, but the Four Agreements are so powerful. The first one is be impeccable with your word. Don't talk bad about others or yourself, which is
Yeah.
huge, right? Don't gossip, condemn, or complain. So that's that. And then the second, I always get the middle two mixed up, but don't take things personally. To take something personally means you have the highest form of arrogance.
Hmm.
Don't make assumptions, right? It's okay to guess and test. David looks mad. Let's check to see if he is.
Hmm.
But don't make assumptions. Too many times I see people assuming that something's one way. They respond or react as if it's that way, which causes it to be that way. Then they can come back and see, I told you so. And the last one is always do your best, and your best will vary from day to day because some days you feel good, some days you may have a cold or whatever. But
Yep.
those four agreements are so powerful. That's one. The other one, gosh, there's so many. Man's Search for Meaning is a good one. But the one I wrote down was Bringing Out the Best in Others by Thomas Connellan.
Okay.
And in that book, he talks about, I mean, of course, by contract, we have to say all the John Maxwell books, but
Right.
besides those, but it's Bringing Out the Best in Others, because Connellan talks about how astronauts and most senators at the time of his research were all firstborns. And it's not that firstborns are magical, it's that firstborns are given clearer expectations and more feedback. And if you think about it at home, you think about your pictures. If you got more than one child, if you got 3 children,
Yeah.
you got 100 pictures of your first child, you got 30 of your second child, and you got your third child's in the picture with the other two, right?
Right.
So
Right.
the number of pictures drastically decreases with the number of kids that you have. But that's the same
Yeah.
thing because take care of your older brother and sister. Mom and I are going to go out for dinner or whatever. So they're given responsibility early. They're given feedback early. They're given expectations. So um, that book is an amazing book on, to me, what the whole purpose of performance is clear expectations and timely, relevant feedback. When those two come together, that's performance. And we think we're good at expectations, and we suck at it. We're not good at it. And then
Yeah.
we're afraid of feedback because we think it's going to be negative. So those are two skills we have to work on: is how do we give clear expectation? And Gallup has said that too. When employees are asked, do I know what's expected of me at work? Not a huge percentage can't answer that affirmatively. They don't know what's expected of them. So those two books, right? So the Four Agreements, because it keeps my mind, it keeps
Hmm.
me going off on a hallucination of something that may not be and acting as if it's real. And then the other one is how do I get performance out of my people or out of myself?
Yep.
Expectations and feedback.
And that one's titled Bringing Out the Best in Others.
Yeah, by Thomas Connellan.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I got to read that. I've never read that.
it's
Awesome.
to mine, it's full of bookmarks, right? Post-it
Yep.
notes, bookmarks, because I just think it's a brilliant book.
That's the best thing when you see somebody with a book and it's all marked up,
Oh yeah,
because they've digested that.
yeah,
And what's interesting is when I was 17, my dad gave me a study Bible for my birthday. And I used that for quite a while, and I marked it up quite a bit. And then in 1993, so how old would I have been in 93? I would have been 32 in 93. That one had come apart, and I bought a new one, and I still use that one. And my daughter one day saw me marking that up, and she said, when you're done with that Bible, can I have it?
Oh, wow.
And it spoke a lot to me because she knows what's in that.
Yeah.
The thoughts, the experiences, and I know my oldest son ended up getting my dad's study Bible that he had used for many, many years. And so it was just kind of a neat thing for my only daughter, because I
Yeah.
only have one girl. First, like, Dad, can I have that? And I said, yes, when I die, or when I'm done, when I can't see it anymore, it's
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
So
That's so
that's
cool.
really cool.
Yeah.
So people don't like to talk about failure, but we know that chasing failure can be one of the greatest launch pads to success. So how has failure shaped Jack Klemeyer's life?
Yeah. So I think I've failed more than I've succeeded, but it's just, um, I've been humbled by being fired. Um, I've been infuriated by being wrongly accused of stuff, right? And so
Sure.
it's just, it's been a study in how is resilience? Like how do I not let that get me down? How,
Mm,
how do I learn and move forward? That's to me how failure. That's how, like, the psychology of sales call reluctance. You mentioned that the reason why, because I have a problem with that. It's more what we found through assessments and stuff. It's more of a problem with goal diffusion, meaning I have too many goals, too many varied goals that I don't focus, right? Which is also
mm,
called probably these days attention deficit. But there's 12 actual signs of sales call reluctance. And so I was trying to figure out, where am I? Why am I not making the calls I need to make? What's causing that? And there's a whole science of it. It's a fascinating science about it. But I think it's been a learning example. I mean, I don't, the chasing failure part is go for it and then learn,
right.
right? And I still haven't, I guess, fully embraced that. Sometimes I still hold myself back because I don't want to be embarrassed or don't want to look
Right.
foolish, right? Although the times that I've been embarrassed and looked foolish are the times when there's been a bigger breakthrough. Um, so I don't know about that, but yeah. So failure has just been, it's been a huge part of my life. I mean, from the lumber company going out of business, the family going through that, learning about who a true friend is. Mom and dad had
Mm,
friends that they would go to the country club with and stuff. And then when we lost our business, there were friends that they thought they had that were dear friends that wouldn't even associate with them because, that
wow.
times were hard. So it just, you learn those lessons. I probably have a chip on my shoulder from some of that. But yeah, so just, I think that's where it shaped me, is just, okay, this happened. Now what do I do with it?
Right.
Right.
And how do you move on beyond it?
Yeah, and it may take a couple of days or weeks or months to get past it, right? Depending on what the
Sure.
fit was. I mean, it may take a while, but it's like, okay, um, yeah, I don't set out to fail, if you will. I set out to succeed, but sometimes I get in my own way. Sometimes I make a mistake. Um, I wish I was better at, although I'm a pretty big risk taker on things. But yeah, I don't know. I said failure just is part of life. That's just what
Yep.
happened.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But what's really shaped my life is when you're driving down the highway, and at my age, when you think you have to go to the bathroom, you think I can make it to the next exit. That's a failure that you got to realize. No, you can't make it to the next
You
exit. You
can.
got
You
to
got to
pull over
learn
now.
quickly.
That's right. Right. You got to pull over now. Right.
Pull over
Exactly.
now.
That's right.
Exactly. So, my next question: what has Jack done that you would recommend others do, and why?
Well, I think the neurolinguistic journey. When I left, I was an insurance agent, and then went into a leadership, and I'd hired a coach to help me make that transition, but also to help me in my agency, because I had gone through a divorce and I'd relinquished too much control of my business to my staff person who thought they ran the business,
Mm,
because I'd given them that. It was a huge lesson in, if the void will get filled if you create a void.
sure.
And I ended up having to, he helped me walk through how to terminate her and all that. I mean, I didn't kill her, we just fired her, but Then I asked him, my coach, Tim Hosey, I said, I got to do this. And he said, you got to learn two things. You got to learn neurolinguistics and something else. And I don't remember what the other thing was, but because neurolinguistic occupied my whole space. So there was an institute in Chicago and Skokie, and my new assignment was in Northwest Indiana, which was about a 40-minute drive to Skokie. So every other weekend for 4 years, I was in Skokie, Illinois, learning neurolinguistics. And a lot of therapists used it, a lot of change. But what it helped me do was asking right questions,
Interesting.
how powerful the language. Like I noticed the words that people use to describe
Mm-hmm.
situations, because that's a metaphor to them. And I think of the word as the handle on a suitcase, and then the meaning is what's in the suitcase. So
Yep.
you call them trigger words. It's not the word that triggers you. It's the meaning of the word that you've made
Yes.
somewhere, right? You've made that word. And so a trigger word is nothing more than the handle on a suitcase. It's the meaning you've assigned to it. So
Sure.
and then some of the presuppositions are so powerful, like the quality of your communication can be judged by the results that you get. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that puts the responsibility directly on me, not on anybody else. So if I'm not getting the results that I want, I've got to do something different, not you.
Yep.
So, and then the one that I actually got kicked out of a company. Well, they asked me not to come back, but it's my favorite one because it says behind every behavior, there's a positive intention. And most people are like, no, that's not true. What about murder? Well, you're looking at it from your vantage point. Think of the person who committed the crime. There was a positive intent for them, or they wouldn't have done it. Either escape or power or something. Because we don't necessarily go out to do things that are negative. We do things that benefit us. So behind every behavior. So what that does, the power in that statement, somebody cuts you off in traffic, you immediately start, you get mad, you get upset. But if you just stop for a second and think, what could the positive intent be? You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to really come up with a real answer, but what it does, it takes you out of that gear of judgment and puts you in
Yes.
the gear of curiosity. And if you're in a gear of curiosity, you're much more responsive, you're much more flexible, you have many more options in that gear of curiosity. And so when something bad happens, somebody does something stupid or whatever, I always say, what's the positive intent? Not that I have to come up with one. It just gets me out of saying, you stupid son of a, right now. I can think, okay, wait, they felt lonely, or it doesn't matter what the answer is. It just gets me out of the judgment mode. And that's the
Yes.
goal, is to get out of the judgment mode for me.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. And I love that. It shifts the mindset
Yeah, totally does.
to something that can move forward rather than something that's going to build up a wall.
Yep. Yep.
Very good. The last question that I always have on my list is, what brings Jack joy?
I wrote down being with friends. I mean, our conversations bring me joy. Just the success of others, like our friend Daryl, this
Yes.
past week in Orlando was awarded the Exceeds Expectation Culture Award. Uh, it just was a wonderful, just being around him, just his energy. He was so excited, he was shaking, and it was just neat to be part of that. Although I had nothing to do with it, but just to be around him, to see him. So just
Sure.
seeing friends succeed. Um, I think that brings me joy. Spending time with Kathy, that brings me joy. Spending time with the kids, learning
Yep.
how to see the world.
Sure.
I think it's other people that bring me joy.
I love that. And what I love about that, Jack, is that you can find that daily.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something you're looking forward to.
Yeah.
It's just today, who can I see experiencing something positive and being rewarded or blessed in some way. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there, and this is I told you I was going to throw you a curveball,
Okay.
but you mentioned Daryl, so I've done some interview work with Daryl, and he asked this question I thought was great. What is something I should have asked and didn't?
Oh, that's a John Maxwell
Isn't that a
question.
good question?
It is a good question. Yeah.
So is there anything you can think of that you'd want to share that I didn't ask?
Where can our listeners send a check? That would be a good one.
Very good. I can put it in the show notes.
There you go. No, I don't know. I don't think there is one.
Okay.
I can't think. I'm sure there is. I just can't think of it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
a good curveball question, but no, I can't think of one.
Awesome. Jack, thank you so much for giving me
It's
so
an
much of
honor.
your time. I know that, I just took time that you could have been billing,
No, this was more
spend it
valuable.
with me. So I appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be on your show.
My pleasure. What a great conversation with Jack. Here were some of my takeaways. I love the story of the Kingsford charcoal briquettes. Who would have thought that came from leftover scrap lumber at the Ford Motor Company? And who would have thought that you went to your Ford dealer to buy your barbecue? I love this statement. When leaders don't recognize their strengths, then they spend time on the wrong things. It's just so powerful for leaders to have coaches that can help them make sure that they're spending their time on the things they need to be working on. I also love the story of why Jack wears red socks. When you don't ask the right questions, you don't get the right answers. And then the lessons he learned from his dad. Tomorrow's always a better day. And then the question, are you the person that's making the room brighter when you enter it or when you leave? I can tell you Jack always makes a room brighter when he comes in. And lastly, looking for positive intent in others and how that will shift your mindset, our mindset, and allows us to find opportunity, even in things that might seem negative in the moment. So those were my takeaways from my conversation with Jack. What were yours? Until next time, thanks for listening to the Navigating Leadership Podcast.